these little stuff, to your point about the brutality of it, like that's very impactful when there's 5,000, 6,000 people voting, the little whisper campaigns. When there's 100,000 people voting, man, the vast majority of them have no idea that you're lying about me about X, Y, or Z. Like they'll never see it, they'll never hear it. So I'm like, instead of spending any emotional energy on that, I'm going to go spend money and time talking to these 10,000 or 20,000 or 100,000 people who are actually going to come vote and want to hear about the issue.
Thank you for joining us again this week. We have John Huffman with us, the former mayor of Southlake and the former city councilor. He's running in the special election to replace Kelly Hancock, who's now our state comptroller, interim comptroller. In SD9, he's on the ballot November 4th up in the North Tarrant County district where he's running. Welcome to the show, John. How are you today?
I'm great, Garrett. I appreciate you having me, man. This is wonderful to be here.
It's an honor to have you. I've followed you on Twitter for a while. Really some good takes you have there. What made you decide to jump in the ring to be a state senator?
Oh, man, what a good question. So we've had the honor of living here in the district and Southlake specifically since 2008 and had the chance to serve in a variety of different roles from city councilman to mayor. And when Senator Hancock got pulled up to interim comptroller and opened up this seat, really, my wife and I prayed about it, thought about it a long time, and really thought it was a great opportunity to serve the district, to serve the folks of the district at a larger level. Because ultimately, everybody in Texas deserves to be represented by a proven and battle-tested leader. I've been in the fight and all these conservative issues that are facing the state and had some great wins over the last decade and a half. And I think we're ready to step into this role and go fight for these same issues in Austin. We love people, we love serving people, and we want that to continue in the future if this is what God has for us. So that's ultimately why I'm in the race. We're excited about it. It's a sprint. These special elections are just all out sprint. No time for any rest. So we got 6 weeks till early voting, a little less actually. And so we're hitting the ground hard, and it's been a lot of fun.
That sounds great. So you were mayor. Southlake, for those who don't know, I mean, if you're in Dallas, you know Southlake, but for don't know, is a suburb north and east of Dallas, or north and east of Fort Worth. It's close, pretty close to DFW Airport.
That's right.
And it's, there's businesses, there's budget, there's whatever else, but there's also a lot of like communities there. It's a really nice area. People like, it's a very desirable area to live in. So, that's where you kind of got your start. You said city council and at least on the political side. What sort of experience does that, from both your political experience, but also from your professional experience, which I'll let you touch on, like prepares you to day one be ready to go into the state Senate? You'll be going in the interim. So if there's a special session, how can you represent SD9 to the best of for your constituents?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I guess let me tell you a little bit my background and my bio, and then I'll get into why I think I'm prepared to step into this job day one. So I grew up in College Station. I was born in Galveston on the island, BOI.
Oh, wow.
Grew up in College Station. I wore the maroon jacket for you, just for all your Austin listeners. Just kidding. Oh, we love all Texans. I saw that. Wait a minute. I think I saw what you did there. Hey, grew up in College Station. Actually, graduating from college, A&M Consolidated is the high school, but we had equal number of people that wanted to go to A&M as wanted to really get out. So I had a ton of friends who went to UT, and we of course got to spend some time on the weekends visiting friends in Austin, which had a great time. But A&M was a great place to go to school. I was in the Corps Cadets. Actually got to serve as commander of the Corps Cadets my senior year. Spent 4 years, had a great time. Went to law school after that. Met my beautiful wife at A&M. We got married in law school. Went to law school at Georgetown in Washington. So 3 years living up in our nation's capital was a ton of fun. Actually got to work on Capitol Hill with my wife as well. I worked for Senator John Cornyn, and she worked for Kay Bailey Hutchison. And so we sort of did the whole Capitol Hill thing. And I mean, if your readers have spent any time in DC on Capitol Hill, it's a very young city. right? Especially on the staff side, like behind the cameras. It's young. We're 22, 23. All of our friends were in our early 20s, and we were just hanging out, having a great time. It was a ton of fun. I worked for Senator Cornyn's subcommittee on immigration, and so there was just a few of us in the office. The big boss, the top boss, was Rita O'Connor, who is now an Article III judge in Fort Worth, doing a great job. And the number two in the office was Chip Roy, and just a couple other ones. And I was the lowly legal intern, but we had so much fun. We just hang out and talk about policy and politics, and learned a lot. Had a great time. But while we were in law school, so my wife and I had our first baby, and then got pregnant with our second. So we both being from Texas, I'm from College Station, she's a San Antonio girl. We decided that DC was not the place we wanted to raise our family. So moved on back to DFW, found Southlake in 2008 when we moved back, and yeah, just loved it. It's a real wonderful place to live. Professionally, so I joined up with a large law firm, spent 6 years practicing big law, and then actually went in-house with a construction company, and then in 2016 started my own. So I have a residential contracting company. We do new builds, remodels, and so totally different than my legal education. I'm paying a lot of money for student loans for an education I don't use, and that's okay. Love the entrepreneurial life. Small business, as you know, is really the engine of the Texas and the American economy. I think being a small business owner, being an entrepreneur, really prepares you well and gives you a good perspective to be in public service. When I got onto city council in 2015, I actually not started my company. I started my company a year later, but it was really interesting, especially being in the construction field, because now all of a sudden I was on council overseeing our building department, but I was also a user of the service, right? And so I could give real-time feedback, like, hey, from the market's perspective, like, well, what if we did this, or what if we did this, try to improve efficiencies. And really, more than that, it's just having a mindset that you're living under the rules that you're writing, right? It's very important, I think, because there's so many kind of career type politicians that are very divorced from having to live under the rules that they've written, that they forget when they pass this regulation or create this bureaucratic position, or pass this law or that law. On the other side of that, there are thousands, tens of thousands of small businesses who are going to have to go hire an accountant or a lawyer to figure it out, or get on ChatGPT and try to figure out what that means for them and their business. So keeping that mindset, I think, is maybe a better public servant. I remember I think it was 2012, when Romney was running against Obama. There was some point in a debate where Romney made a comment that he said, unless, was talking about Obama being a career politician, he said, unless you have, you don't understand the pressure of the American economy unless you've had to make payroll on Friday. And at the time, I was like, okay, I was working for a big company, whatever, kind of. Now I get it, right? Now I get it. I mean, the pressure of having to fund your payroll, to having to make decisions between paying this bill or that bill when it's slow, right? Or calling a supplier and saying, can you hold off for a second? Or calling a customer and saying, I really need that check today instead of next week, right? All these things that the American entrepreneur, the American small business owner deals with, right? People in government forget. So, long-winded way of saying, one of the reasons why I feel really good about this race and being able to step into Senator Hancock's shoes, Comptroller Hancock's shoes in this Senate seat, is because I've lived in the economy. I've been a small business owner for a decade. I understand what it's like to work under these rules that we pass. I've also been there and done that with local government, and I think that perspective is going to lead to good outcomes with the constituents of SD9.
Well, what are the things you go back to the beginning of what you're talking about? DC is a very young city. When I was there, like, if I went to pick somebody up from the airport, if we drove through DC or Arlington or whatever, especially like on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, and like you see the drunks hanging out by the clubs or whatever, you just like point out to people, like, it's like, those are the people who run your government. So
that's right.
Whenever you keep in mind, it's a drunk 22-year-old that's making these decisions for the large part. So
that's exactly right.
So like, don't take it too seriously.
Where did you work in DC?
Oh, I worked for America Rising. which is or was like the opposition research arm, effectively, of the RNC and of
Oh,
the
that's great.
Republican Party. So my job was to I was the director of tracking. So my job was to manage our team of trackers out across the country who would go to events to record Democrats speaking. Sometimes they would accidentally tell the truth, and now you get in trouble for that. So, that was kind of the long and short of the main part of what I was doing there. And then I worked for a company where I, honed my writing chops, started doing PR basically, and learning how to really write an op-ed, get it pitched, get it placed, get people on radio, TV, etc. So that was the kind of the two different roles I had when I was there, and I was there for about 4.5 years. And then I had a similar experience to you, where it's just like, it was fun. I was in my 20s. I wanted to go home. I guess,
Right.
like, this is not like a town where I'm going to spend the rest of my life, because it was a little too much fun, but also like it's the swamp. Like, it kind of the people it keeps there for a while, it kind of starts to eat at. So you kind of get back to your roots and kind of become a person again.
No, that's how we felt too. It was like, we were 25, 26 or so when we left. And it felt like if you were going to go much further than that, you were committing, to life. Right.
Yeah. Like, this is it.
Yeah. Yeah. Not, I mean, listen, we have a lot of friends who stayed up there and had a great time doing it. But yeah, we wanted to raise our kids in Texas, and just wanted to spend a little bit more time outside the Beltway before we thought about doing anything else. But it was great. Yeah, it's a great city. A lot of nights at Tortilla Coast and all kinds of other places. Fun times.
Yeah, I mean, so I was there before T Coast closed, but yeah, apparently it's gone now. That's sad.
Okay. So I was up there a couple years ago. Yeah, it's gone. How sad. It's an institution.
And for those who don't know, T Coast was this like Mexican restaurant right by the Capitol, where famously Paul Ryan worked while he was an intern at the U.S. House of Representatives before he became Speaker of the House. Yeah,
he worked at T Coast.
Yeah,
I had no idea. That's great. It's a little piece of lore. I had no idea. That's awesome.
Yeah. So so that you talked about like kind of your reason for why you want to run, and like kind of what prepares you to run. But like, there's a lot of issues that a state senator is going to have to look at. I think they had 9,000 something bills in the regular session last year. They passed close to like 1,100, 1,200 of them. Passed all the way through to the governor signing them. That's not even counting all the bills that just passed one chamber, didn't pass the other, or passed both but didn't get through conference, et cetera, et cetera. So like, you're going to have to, rapid fire stuff on any given occasion.
That's right.
And then you're going to have to get onto some committees, and like, that's where a lot of your work is going to be done. So like, what are the youbiggest issues for your campaign that obviously you're going to have to touch on a bunch of stuff, but you're only going to have so much time. So like, where do your priorities for that seat align with like local Republicans, state Republicans, et cetera, for like what you want to push when you're a state senator?
Yeah, great question. So my priorities for this seat are, I think it won't come as much of a surprise to you and your listeners, because they really mirror a lot of the concerns that most folks in Texas have, and most Republican voters in Texas. Texas is an incredible place, an incredible state with incredible people. And we have been that way because we face challenges head on, and we have good, smart solutions to those challenges that have created the Texas miracle. Created this amazing place where it's truly the best place in the country and in the world to live and to raise your family and to start your business. But just because we've had such a great run doesn't mean we're going to stay at the top, unless we also have thoughtful people making thoughtful decisions and with the challenges that are coming up. I'll give you just a couple of them. So first and foremost, and this is the thing that everyone's talking the most about, is property taxes. We have to not just rein in and reform the property tax system. I think we need to kill the property tax system. And listen, I understand that we have to fund our government somehow. I get that. But fundamentally, I have a huge problem with the idea that we all rent our homes from the government. I mean, that's the reality. Is it doesn't matter how well you do in personal finances. It doesn't matter how long you've owned your home. It doesn't matter if you achieve that incredible milestone of paying off your mortgage, which we're all taught from from our younger years, that work hard, pay off your mortgage, and then you will have achieved something great. Well, even if you do, you're going to be stuck with a property tax bill that goes up every single year, and if you don't pay that bill, you lose your home. That's crazy. That's, to me, fundamentally, that's wrong. That means you don't really own your home when it comes down to it. So I think we need to kill this whole system, especially when it comes to homestead. And there's some easy ways to do. I say easy. There's some simple ways to do it that will be difficult to tackle, but I think we have to try. I think we need to completely to really accelerate our homestead exemption. Maybe, not as a percentage of your property value, but maybe a cap like a $500,000 or even a $750,000 exemption to start shifting the burden away from homeowners. I think that's super important. I also think we need to step into some more user-based, like fee-based taxation, even sales tax to supplement what we are losing in property tax revenue. I get all that. I would also look at increasing property taxes on out-of-state corporations that are coming in, gobbling up our single-family residential neighborhoods. In some cases, entire residential neighborhoods, to turn our younger generations into perpetual renters. It's a problem. And as long as we have this taxation system that relies on onesies and twosies, local governments to decrease your property taxes, it's just structurally going to be an issue. Now, as a local government official, I had the chance to work on these issues. So starting when I was on council, we maximized the homestead exemption at 20%. Then we started lowering the tax rate, not just a little cut to say we lowered the tax rate. Actually, 3 years before I became mayor, we started cutting the tax rate to the no new revenue rate. When I was mayor for 3 years, we cut below the no new revenue rate, so that as far as the city of Southlake is concerned, if you lived in Southlake during those years, you paid less to the city than you did the year prior. So an actual tax cut, which is great. And the reason for that is really simple. As an elected public official, you are a fiduciary for your taxpayers. That's it. These dollars, and when I would go talk to like dads and donuts groups, I'd make these kids repeat after me that government money is not the government's, it's yours. It's the taxpayers, right? We're just fiduciaries for it. So it's not on us to decide, well, okay, I think we should take a little more, take a little less. Yes, we have to fund some minimum level of government services. And in Southlake, our government services have always been really, really top notch, award winning. But the reality is that if we as fiduciaries have the opportunity to cut taxes and give that money back to its rightful owners, the people, then we have to do it. I'll take that same mindset in a state senate. One of the things we talk about on the campaign trail is that you don't have to worry about what I'll do in office because you can see what I've done. And that's unique. I'm the only person in this race who's ever held an elected position. So you can look at the 10 years of record I have of aggressive tax cuts, and you can say, okay, well, that's what he's going to do in the Senate, and I will. So that's a huge issue. We got to tackle that. We got to tackle it for the future generations who want to own a home as well. Another huge issue that Governor Abbott did a great job tackling this session, I think we need to continue his work, is in the education field. And, simply put, we just have to teach all kids, and fund their schools. We were a huge proponent of school choice. We actually was blessed to be invited down to the bill signing on the lawn of the governor's mansion. That was a great experience. But because we believe that every child deserves an excellent education in Texas, and no kid should be locked in a failing school district just because of their zip code. So this school choice structure that Governor Abbott put together and that the legislature got across the finish line gives parents the opportunity to choose the best school for their child, or the best education system for the child. My wife and I homeschool our 3 kids. I say my wife and I, it's my wife. Okay, just to be really clear. Our oldest just graduated. Actually, she's at DBU as of 2 weeks ago. Doing great, having a great time. So our 17-year-old and 14-year-old are still in high school homeschooling, and we have loved the experience. And I would love for every kid who wants to, every parent who wants to do that, to have the chance to do it. So we got to teach all kids and make sure they have a great educational opportunity, no matter what they want to do, what their parents want to do. But at the same time, we have to fund our great public schools. We cannot be starving our public schools of revenue. One issue we deal with statewide is recapture and Robin Hood, and it is starving good school districts of money. I think it's an unfair system. I think we need to revisit it. I think every public school should be funded to make sure that the children who stay in the public school system have an excellent educational opportunity as well. So that's ultimately what it's about. It's about teaching kids, empowering parents to make good choices, and then making sure whatever those choices are, that they're fully supported so that kids have a great education. So those are two really important issues. There's a lot more that we're going to tackle, but man, those two really get me going.
Oh, fair enough. I mean, there's a lot to dive into when you start talking about tax policy. Um, for me, one of the things I think about whenever, like I talk when I hear folks talk about property taxes, and you're talking about trying to get rid of it altogether. I understand the impulse to like want to get rid of any type of taxation, but also you acknowledge and everyone acknowledges like we still have a government. Those things cost money. So like for me. Like the main issue I look at is that property taxes are were chosen primarily because the government knows what property they have or what not they have, but that is out there. So whenever you're looking at different taxing policies, like one of the reasons why income tax took so long to even become a thing was because it was really hard for the government to know how much money you made. They just kind of had to guess and all sort of stuff. It wasn't until we had better accounting that the government was like, we can take some money from that too.
Right.
But when it comes to property taxes, we already know. We know who owns the land. We know like who's responsible for it. We know what dwellings are on it, and for the most part, because permitting, and all that sort of stuff. My view on it has always been we need to look at the unimproved value of the land versus the improved value. That way you can still do whatever it wants. What is that land worth? Because one of the functions of a property tax is that land does not become wasted, or you can't just sit on it. So I think that if a homestead should allow that to be, if you wanted to zero out a homestead, sure. But when it comes to business property or which includes investment properties or those sorts of things, if somebody is just sitting on it waiting for forever, then we start to get into a problem of there not being enough supply in the areas where people need to live. That's one of the functions it does now. So we have to resolve that problem if we get rid of property taxes.
Yeah.
Which isn't to say we shouldn't. It's just a problem that's going to pop up, that a second order or first order consequence that we need to address.
No, you're 100% right, and I will say my focus is going to be at the homestead level first, right? And there's some pushback from the business community, and I totally understand that they don't want to bear the entire burden of the property tax system. I totally get that. But first and foremost, one of the things that public policy has to support is good incentives, right? And we want to incentivize, to your point about maximizing use out of land. I totally agree with that. But we have to support good public policy like home ownership. And the reality is we do have a home ownership crisis in Texas. It's becoming more and more expensive to buy a home, to buy a starter home, to buy a second home, to pay for the construction of the home, to pay for the maintenance. Insurance is getting prohibitively expensive. Property taxes are getting prohibitively expensive. The reality is all the data shows that families who are able to purchase a home are better citizens inside their community. They have better outcomes as far as business is concerned. They have better outcomes as far as kids, whether it's placing kids in college or with good jobs or good education opportunities, but also just keeping kids out of jail. Home ownership is the key to unlocking a lot of what we would call social good, right? And so we have to do everything we can as a state government to encourage policies that lead to home ownership, right? And so that's why my focus with property taxes is going to be first and foremost the homestead. So I'd say, like I said, one idea, instead of a 20% homestead exemption, let's raise that homestead exemption to $500,000. So if you own a home below $500,000, then you're going to pay no property taxes. Above that, you'll pay, just kind of like we do the system we do now. But I think that would be a great start to make sure we're incentivizing starter home purchases of first-time home buyers, and then making that a little bit less, making it a little bit less unfair. Part of it, though, is appraisal reform as well. The appraisal system is it's just a little it's arbitrary.
And that's one of the reasons why that's one of the reasons why I look at the unimproved value, because there's so much arbitrary and so much just randomness that happens when you have to include the value of the dwelling on it as well, that like you end up having these issues where the tax rate can vary. And if people don't know, because a lot of people don't know that you have to challenge it, it'll probably go down. To keep it down, you just challenge it every year and it kind of keeps it at a normal level. But if you don't, it starts to get crazy. Yep. Well, like that's not a good public policy system, that some people pay more or less just because they have like a better idea of like how archaic rules of tax, property tax policy in
Right.
the state, right?
Or did a better job arguing their protests. Yeah, I mean,
right.
I don't know if you've ever done it in person. I went once in person, and I
just done it all. Yeah.
Yeah, the online system is much better. I did it probably 5 or 6 years. I did it in person, and I went down to Tarrant Appraisal District, and I had at my hearing, the folks who were listening to my hearing, and I had all these comps laid out and reasons why, thinking I was going to go through this like scientific analysis with them, and we're going to come up with, a great number that makes sense. And they looked at it all. They were like, well, how about we just knock 5% off or something like that? It was just completely arbitrary. Like that's it. Like, you were going to tax me on a number that we're determining in this conversation that we just sort of think is fair. That to me is crazy.
5% sounds not as good as 7%. Like,
I'll make it 8. Make it 8.5. But so when I think about sales tax is you would choose to engage in commerce, right? Whether you're buying a toothbrush or a car or whatever it is, you know that you're going to incur that tax when you engage in commerce, and that to me is much more predictable. You can plan for it. If you don't want to incur that sales tax, then you don't make the purchase, right? There's some stuff you can't get away from, right? But in general, you can avoid that taxation if you choose not to engage in the commerce. And so that to me has always been much more a much fairer sense of like taxation. Like if I engage in commerce, I just I get it. I know what I'm going to what I'm going to incur here. With your home, it's every single year you're going to pay more or less depending on your different levels of local officials, and lowering taxes or maybe leaving taxes the same, or God forbid raising your taxes. And you just it's so arbitrary, you have no control over it. It's just a problem. We got to fix it.
It is. There's absolutely it needs for reform. But we could also go into a sales tax rant. But I think we've done enough tax policy to people are falling asleep and some people are driving. So
you got to wake them up, Garrett. No more tax policy.
Yeah. So I mean, so I was looking at your website. I think another one of the major issues you're trying to talk about is stuff that comes to like immigration and law and order. Do you want to talk a little bit about like what you're doing or what you're trying to do in those areas?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say that's probably two sides of the same coin, kind of the public safety coin, both immigration, border security and immigration enforcement, as well as public safety on the local level. And again, as mayor, I got the chance to work on all of these issues as well. On the public safety issue, one of the most important things we do as a city is make sure that there's ordered liberty in our area, right? Our first job is to maintain that liberty, but in an ordered way, which means we fund our police officers, our firefighters, and our DPS personnel. As a city, we were really blessed, I think, with the opportunity to pay for school resource officers for our local school district, Carroll ISD. We pay for that completely. It's not a resource that the school district has to pay for. So that was put in place by a previous mayor after one of the school shootings, and we ramped up this SRO program. When I was mayor, the Uvalde shooting happened, and like every other public official in the country, we got the calls for gun control. Oh, this is a terrible thing. We need you to start restricting law-abiding citizens' ability to carry a gun or to do this. What are you going to do about guns in your community? I said, well, first of all, we have something called the Second Amendment, which trumps your feelings about guns. Second of all, I know that the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And we have this great SRO program full of men and women who wear the badge of the city of Southlake, who are in our schools every single day, giving fist bumps to kids, taking pictures with them, signing their yearbook, having great relationships with them, but who I knew and I know today would lay down their life without a second's hesitation to protect those kids. And so what I did as mayor is, with my council's support, of course, was increase the funding for our SRO program to add 4 FTEs, 4 officers to that program to make sure we had full coverage at any time, the funding for full coverage. So because the reality is that if a school shooting happened and we don't have time to get an officer from another campus, officer has to be on that campus. So that was our response, because at the end of the day, hey, we as a government protect what we find valuable, right? We find the money to protect what we find valuable. We have armed officers at airports and at courthouses, armed officers at at the Fed, and all these places that we find very valuable. We should have armed officers at our schools. That's a critically important piece of public safety. I thought as a city of Southlake, we made a commitment to our parents when they put their kids in schools that we would do everything humanly possible to keep them safe. That's a minimum commitment. And so that SRO program, I think we should continue to look for ways to expand that across the state. A lot of communities are doing it, and which is wonderful. I did it as mayor, and we'll work on those issues in the Senate. Also, as mayor, I got the chance to go boots on the ground on the border. So this was 2023. So this is in the height of the Biden border crisis. Got to visit the border, fly in a DPS helicopter actually, and to actually see the border and see some of the challenges. And it's really amazing. We have some incredible, hardworking men and women who wake up every day and try to secure the border. Thank God for President Trump's efforts down there. It's a lot better than it was in 2023. But DPS now is stepping up to the plate. I saw an article actually a couple of days ago saying that they are stepping up their efforts for deportation of violent criminal illegals, which is great. I think we should continue those efforts. So I would make sure we are funding our DPS so that they can do good work with border security and keeping the cartels and the flow of drugs out, but also rounding up these criminal illegals and making sure that they are out of our communities and back to their country of origin. That's certainly a great state function. We can continue to assist President Trump in that.
What sort of policies can you put in place on the immigration front to kind of lock in those gains at the state level? Should the next administration, whomever it may be, Democrat, Republican, or whatever, try to peel back how much they're doing at the border so that, Texas remains secure once it's, fully locked down? Yeah,
it's a great question. I think, obviously continuing funding for physical barriers are great. So if you've been to the border, there are multiple levels of border wall. So there's a Bush wall, there's a Trump wall, there's an Abbott wall. Everyone and that's how they kind of refer to the different types of walls and fences and screening. So because the governor has done a great job in funding some physical borders protection, I would increase that and make sure we can supplant. That's not a fail safe. Again, if you've been down to the Rio Grande, you see how difficult the concept of actually building a physical barrier across every foot of border is. And that, remember, Texas only has part of the 1,800-mile border with Mexico. So that's only one piece of the puzzle. Electronic infrastructure, surveillance, that's very important. The federal government pays for a lot of that. State can pay for some of it. And then personnel, right? Continuing to fund DPS where to not supplant, but to supplement what the federal government's doing to make sure those systems are in place so that, if a future Democratic president starts to dial back President Trump's efforts, we have a state effort in place. But I think, honestly, deportations are a critical piece of this. There are millions, literally millions, of outstanding orders of removal for folks that have blown their asylum or have gotten an order of removal from an immigration court. The federal immigration officers can't possibly get to them all. And one of the things that DPS is doing, again, under Governor Abbott's leadership and the funding they've received from the legislature, is they are taking some of these cases and starting to assist in deportations. You've got a federal order of removal. There's nothing wrong with DPS coming and helping you, pack your bags and get out. That's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one more question before we move to the second half of this podcast. And for those listening, I'll do a little pitch there in a second. When it comes to, we've talked, your big issues, property taxes, law and order. But, you mentioned you're a homeschool dad. I was a homeschooler. I know that there's a lot of family values that are constantly kind of at play with that sort of, let's just call it lifestyle, but you're kind of really into it there. How does your faith impact your public service and your goals whenever you're working in the public sphere?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm a Christian. I have a biblical worldview. And what I've always said since I've been in public office is that I believe in my core that I'm going to answer to God someday for how I handle myself, both in public and in private, and how I treat people, and how I treat opportunities that He's given me. And so when I'm in, that is not to make it sound like I'm perfect, dear heavens, I'm not, far from it. But I do feel a very strong burden for doing the very best I can in every situation that I'm in. If I have an opportunity to help someone, to serve someone in a better way, I think I'm going to be accountable to God for how I do that. And so, when I was mayor, I got the chance to wake up every single day and truly think about how I can make people's lives better in the city of Southlake, and whatever, regardless of who they voted for, me, or who they voted for president, or who, how they, what kind of job they have, or what they look like, or what they sound like, or where they worship. I got the chance to help them in a real way, and that was my job. That was my burden. And I feel the same way about getting the chance to serve in the Senate. I'll wake up every single day and with the burden of being accountable to God for how I conduct myself in public and in private. And I'm married to an absolutely amazing woman who's it's been a joy to do life with her. And she also keeps me accountable in all the right ways. We're coming up on year 20, anniversary number 20 in March, which she's told me is the very large diamond anniversary. And I'm not 100% sure I believe that. I might Google that, but
you should listen. You should definitely believe it.
Wait a minute, whose side are you on, Garrett? No, she's awesome, and we do life together. And we called her the first lady of Southlake, and she really lived that. So we'll be digging in and helping everyone we can for this stuff. And having the opportunity to homeschool has been amazing. I mean, you lived it, but just the ability to spend more time and pour into these kids has been great. And we do something called Classical Conversations, if you're familiar. It's a great homeschool co-op. So their friend base is incredible. They have some of the best, most supportive friendships we could ever ask for. And I'll tell you, so I'm 42. Like when I was going through school, I didn't think homeschool was that big of a thing. It is exploding. It is absolutely wild. And so we're on year 11 or 12. But when my wife first started doing it, it was a lot of, Southlake, it's Carroll ISD. It's one of the best school districts truly in the state. And we've always said we feel very blessed that, if the homeschool thing doesn't work out, we can put our kids in Carroll. But it was a lot of looks like, are you crazy? Will you homeschool? And it was a couple years later, and a lot of those same people were like, how do you do this? Like, can you talk about this? And then after COVID, of course, it was like, there was a lot of questions about like, oh, you homeschool. So does that mean you're COVID schooling? We're like, no. We homeschooled long before COVID. We're homeschool OGers. Okay. But that was a whole nother, rabbit trail, but it was really funny. Like in the maybe the only thing funny about those initial days of COVID, it was a couple of weeks later, it was the week after spring break. It was spring break when it really hit. It was that next week that all my kids' public school friends were getting classes canceled. And, it was like extended spring break. And my kids were like, do we get another spring break? And we're like, no, absolutely not. Go sit down at the table and do your work. You're at homeschool, baby.
Yeah. There's no learning loss in homeschool in that case. You're there the whole time.
That's
for
it.
Sure.
Didn't miss a beat.
Well, thank you so much for jumping on today to do this first bit of the interview. For those watching on YouTube or listening on podcast platforms, go over to our Substack. You can listen to the rest of it, or wait 10 days. It'll be back on YouTube, and the full version will be out in next Friday. Before you go, like, where can people find more information about you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at John R. Huffman, on the web at johnhuffman.com. Would love to stay in touch. Anybody who's watching from the district or not, follow us on Twitter and or jump on the website and sign up for our newsletters and sign up for our emails. We would love to keep in touch with you. We're pretty transparent. We're an open book. So if there's something that, we can answer or talk to you about, we'd love to. We are in this for the constituents of SD9 and everyone in Texas. And like I said, we want you and your family to have an incredible experience, no matter who you are or where you come from. So we have work to do. We're going to dig in. We're going to get this done for everyone.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks,
if
Garrett.
You're watching this, if you're watching on YouTube or you found us or whatever, make sure you subscribe. to get more episodes, more commentary from folks like me, from John Huffman, maybe future state senator, to kind of hear about what's happening in Texas from the people who are making the news and people who are moving in and doing things that you may not even have ever thought about. So thank you all for joining in, and thank you again, Mayor Huffman, for joining us. And we'll see we'll see our viewers next week. All right, bye guys.
Thanks, Garrett. Appreciate your time, man. That was great.
Thanks.